So the MediaTek Dimensity 8100 crop of phones are finally here in India. We obviously have the OnePlus 10R, but there's yet another BBK product, which is the Realme GT Neo 3. The Realme GT Neo 2 was easily my favorite Realme phone last year. Therefore, I have huge expectations from the GT Neo 3. If you don't know me yet, I'm Arshad, you're watching Tracking Tech English, and this is our detailed review of the Realme GT Neo 3 and camera comparison against another Realme phone, that is the Realme 9 Pro Plus. You want to know why? Stay tuned till the camera comparison part. Obviously, the marquee feature in the Realme GT Neo 3 is that crazy 150 watt ultra dart charging technology. Now, Realme claims that with this 150 watt charging, you can actually charge the Realme GT Neo 3 from 0 to 50% in 5 minutes. But in our testing, it took about 8 minutes. And a full charge from 0 to 100 took about 18 minutes, which is the best we have tested till date. It is really fast. It's faster than the iQOO 9 Pro's flash charge 120 watt technology. Also, we noticed that the heat is trapped within the charger itself, and therefore the phone only got from about 32 to 40 degrees, which is actually not too bad when it's charging. Talking about the charger's a massive brick. It weighs about 200 grams. But the interesting thing is that it is actually a 160 watt charger, and it supports all of the technologies like, PPS, QC, and USB PD as well. However, I did test out Realme's claim on the PPS thing, and I checked it with the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, and it doesn't charge at 45 watts, but it's still pretty good for a USB PD charger. But Realme also claims that this technology is really safe and it can last 1600 cycles, which is actually not a bad thing. Now, for some specific reason, the 150 watt variant of the phone comes with a smaller 4500 mAh battery as opposed to 5000 mAh battery inside the 80 watt variant of the phone. And in my testing, the 4500 mAh battery held up really well, and a lot of the thanks goes to the fact that the Dimensity 8100 is a very power efficient chip. I battered the phone and I got about 5 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time with 7% battery left, and I can easily assure you that you'll get 7 hours of screen on time with the Realme GT Neo 3 on regular usage, which means that you'll get a little more than a day's worth of juice from the phone. If you've come this far, do the honors, like, share, subscribe, and maybe even hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we put out an awesome new tech video. Now, talking about the Dimensity 8100 inside the GT Neo 3, we did a very detailed test against its peers and came away super impressed. If you haven't watched that video yet, a link should pop up right now. And you know what? Compared to the Dimensity 8100 inside the Redmi K50, it actually performs better on the GT Neo 3, at least when it comes to benchmarks. We got higher Antutu and Geekbench scores, and we ran a 100-core 30-minute CPU throttle test, which returned a stability of 77%. That's obviously way better than the CPU throttle stability score of 73% on a 40-core test that we ran on the Redmi K50. 3D Mark Wildlife stress test returned a stability score of 69.4%, which is not that great. But more concerning was the fact that the temperature rise was a massive 14 degrees, which is a little too much. Thankfully, the battery life drop was actually not that bad, which is what we noticed in daily testing as well. Now, I ran all of these tests in GT mode. Basically, Realme pushes for performance over throttling and reducing the heat dissipation. Now, the storage is also of the UFS 3.1 type, and you get LPDDR5 RAM as well. The read-write speeds are great on this internal storage. Although all that performance is yet untapped, primarily because BGMI and COD are not optimized for the 8100 yet. BGMI runs at only HD and high, and COD runs at very high or high and max, which means that BGMI runs at 30 FPS and you can get 60 FPS on COD only if you drop down the graphics to high. Regardless, playing games on the phone was a great experience and daily performance was great too. I just hope that Realme actually pushes out an update, or the Dimensity 8100 is soon optimized for BGMI and COD, two games that are extremely popular in our country. The camera setup on the GT Neo 3 is nearly identical to that of the Realme 9 Pro Plus, but the SoCs are different, and therefore the ISP performance could be different and the algorithm could be different, so I decided to test them out. First things first, there's absolutely no difference in detail retention. The 50 megapixel IMX766 Sony sensor inside these phones are equally sharp when you pixel peep. But in dynamic range performance, the GT Neo 3 and the 9 Pro Plus offer different experiences. The GT Neo 3 doesn't retrieve as many details from the shadows as the 9 Pro Plus, but it does a fantastic job with the highlights in the scene, which I feel is more important. Overblown highlights, as you could see on the Realme 9 Pro Plus, are actually difficult to correct in post, especially in JPEGs. Now, colors are not reproduced faithfully by the algorithm on both the phones, but the GT Neo 3 is lesser evil of the two when it comes to reproducing the bright greens and the reds. Now, which is also immediately apparent in this picture of Sagar. Just look at how good the skin tones look on the GT Neo 3. Plus, you get natural looking sharp details too. Against the light with HDR on, both are equally good, but the 9 Pro Plus offers slightly more details. Overall, I like the pictures of human subjects from the GT Neo 3. There's this sense that I'm capturing from a more expensive phone compared to the Realme 9 Pro Plus, which is obviously not as expensive. Which is also further accentuated from the portrait shots that you can see on your screen right now. The GT Neo 3's portraits look so much better. You can tell it was captured from an expensive phone. 2MP macros are bad on both. You can only shoot from 4 centimeters. Ultra wide is not too bad on both the cameras in daylight, but the 9 Pro Plus offers a nicer, brighter exposure. Now, selfies are nice and sharp on both phones. However, the GT Neo 3 goes for a more muted, natural look compared to the contrasty, attractive look of the 9 Pro Plus. Against the light, I actually prefer the 9 Pro Plus. Selfie portrait edge cutout, however, is better on the 9 Pro Plus. The other area where the GT Neo 3 takes the cake is in low light performance. Firstly, it doesn't overdo the low light processing. It cleans up the noise better. The color temperature is far more accurate compared to the jaundice-ridden shot of the Realme 9 Pro Plus. The IMX766 just performs better on the Realme GT Neo 3 with the ISP of the Dimensity 8100. Low-light ultra-wide shots are alright looking on both, but low-light selfies, however, are bright on the Realme GT Neo 3, but not as sharp as the Realme 9 Pro Plus. Now, while the GT Neo 3 can shoot 4K 60fps videos, you don't get EIS. OIS performance at 4K 30fps, which is a match on both the phones, is equally bad. Plus, Realme 9 Pro Plus shoots far better dynamic range and colors in video. Or that Realme kind of dropped the ball out here. But the sound recording is actually similar on both. So I'm shooting a 4K 30fps video on both, the Realme GT Neo 3 and the Realme 9 Pro Plus right now. So I'm shooting a 4K 30fps video on both, the Realme GT Neo 3 and the Realme 9 Pro Plus right now. Now you get EIS at 1080p 60fps, but the GT Neo 3 shoots better focused video with better quality. So if you're okay with 1080p recording, the GT Neo 3 is great. Front video tops out at Full HD 30fps, but 9 Pro Plus has a tighter crop. Both have a jelly effect in EIS as well. The 9 Pro Plus does offer better dynamic range too. I mean, I'm surprised that Realme doesn't actually do better dynamic range in video on the more expensive GT Neo 3. Now, talking about the design, as was the case with last year's GT Neo 2, Realme goes wild with the CMF, which is the color material finish of this phone as well. You'll get these very flashy looking racing stripes actually cutting through the camera cutout. And I'm not really a fan, but maybe you could like it. This is obviously also a glass back with a polycarbonate frame and a Corning Gorilla Glass 5 protection on the front. I also did notice that the glass on the rear actually has a matte finish compared to the glossy sort of reflective finish of the glass used for the camera module. For the rest of the design, you get nice and clicky power button on the right with nice ridges too, and you get separated volume rocker buttons too. Again, very clicky. But of course, there's no headphone jack. There's a USB Type-C port at the bottom, and there's a stereo speaker setup with support for Dolby Atmos. And this stereo speaker actually sounds very, very good. It's loud, it's clean. It's a very good sounding, stereo speaker. Take a listen for yourself. Plus, for the audiophiles out there, you get support for 24-bit 192 kHz, but unfortunately, there is no headphone jack, so you'll have to do it through a external DAC. I did use my external DAC, and it sounded really good on the GT Neo 3. Now, the one good thing about the phone is that it is also very slim. The in-hand feel is great, and at about 188 grams, it doesn't feel very heavy either. So, in-hand feel gets a thumbs up from me. Now, only if the design ID wasn't this garish. Initially, I liked it when I saw the pictures, but in real life, this doesn't work for me. Now the display on the Realme GT Neo 3 is your standard 6.7-inch flat panel with FHD plus resolution, AMOLED of course, and you also get support for HDR10, 120Hz refresh rate, and you also get a GNCD of 0.4, which means that it's fairly color accurate, especially in that professional setting with DCI-P3 mode on. It's also a very bright display. It goes up to 1000 nits of peak brightness when you're playing HDR videos on YouTube. There's unfortunately no support for HDR on Netflix, which is a bit of a letdown. 120Hz refresh rate is good. It's got variable refresh rate, but it is not an LTPO panel, so it doesn't go as low as 1 Hz. So you get somewhere like 48 Hz, 60 Hz, depending on the content that is playing on the display. Now there's also a display chip for motion interpolation, which actually interpolates frame rates and sort of, with software bumps it up to 120 FPS or 90 FPS depending on the game itself. Now it's supported on PUBG and League of Legends is what Realme says, but BGMI at the moment is not even running at optimized graphics, so I don't really see the point in it. And of course, in general also the interpolation was not as effective as I saw on the iQOO 7. Now also part of the display is the in-display fingerprint scanner, which I feel is placed a little too low. It should have been placed high, but it is very fast to unlock the phone. Apart from that, the haptic feedback is something that Realme has been working on a lot in 2022. It's almost as good as the Realme 9 Pro Plus and better than the Realme GT 2 Pro, which was not as good as the Realme 9 Pro Plus. Wasn't that confusing? Hear that slowly again. Now coming to the software, the GT Neo 3 actually comes with Android 12 out of the box with Realme UI 3.0. The UI, UX elements, all of that are designed very well. It's very close to stock Android in terms of looks itself. It's a very good software otherwise, but the biggest problem with the software, Realme UI 3.0, is the fact that there is no distinction between a budget Realme phone and an expensive phone like this one. You still get those same number of pre-installed bloatware apps, terrible apps that too. I absolutely don't like that experience. Now, if you're wondering about software updates, Realme claims that you'll get 2 years of software updates and 3 years of security updates on the GT Neo 3, which is okay, not too bad. Now the GT Neo 3 is a good phone, but there are two problems with it. Firstly, the Dimensity 8100 is a very powerful, very power efficient chip. It's actually very, very good to use this phone. Also, the other problem is that this is the 150 watt variant of the phone. It's going to be far more expensive than the 80 watt variant of the phone, which has a larger battery size as well of 5000 mAh. So you'll expect better battery life too. Now the 80 watt variant of the phone will be able to charge the phone from 0 to 100 in about 33 minutes, which is fine. Which is okay. Why do you want to charge it faster? I just don't get it. At the end of the day, the 150 watt charging will only be a vanity metric. Yes, it's great, it's really fast, but then after a point, I don't really see a difference. Half an hour is okay. I mean, what are you going to do by saving those 8, 10, 15 minutes? Paying more money for slightly faster charging and lower battery life doesn't seem like a good financial decision to me. So I would suggest that you pick up the 80 watt variant of the phone. But if Realme ends up doing something like, okay, with the 12GB, 256GB variant of the phone, you get 150 watt charging, then, I mean, there is no other option. You'll have to end up picking that. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think of the GT Neo 3? What do you think is cool about the phone? What do you not like about the phone? Let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, this is Arshad signing off. Keep tracking and stay safe.